So you're finally ready to take your Jeep to the next level. These are my top 5 big ticket mods that you're gonna want to do. First up is suspension. And now this is something you're gonna make sure to not want to cut any corners on. You're gonna want to avoid spacer lifts and like budget lifts. That's not anything that you want. That will lift you, but you're not gonna get any sort of performance from that. For example, what I'm running on the Gladiator here is a 3-inch kit from Synergy Manufacturing. And this has everything from springs, bump stop extensions, track bar, sway bar end links, brake lines, everything you need that's related to the suspension, all in one package, ready to roll, and engineered and designed for your application. You don't want one piece from this kit and another from this company. All these components are designed to work together and engineered properly. And if you want to take your suspension even further than something like this, you can upgrade your shocks to something like an internal bypass, or just go all out and just do coilovers on all 4 corners. Go down below, smash that subscribe button. While you're there, smash the like button while you're there as well, because I'm putting out awesome videos. Now that you've lifted your Jeep, you need to put on bigger tires. That's upgrade number 2. Now, there's a lot of different things to consider when you're picking your tires. First up, do you want all-terrains or something like this that's a mud terrain? All-terrains are gonna be a little bit better if you do more street driving. They're a little quieter, better fuel economy. But generally, the mud terrains, a little bit louder on the freeway, but the trade-off is that they're usually better off-road. Also, you gotta think about what size of tire, and there's a lot of things that are gonna dictate that, like how much lift did you actually do? Also, you have to consider what axles you're running on your Jeep. If you're running Dana 44s like me, you're probably gonna be limited to something like a 37 or a 38-inch tire. You're not gonna wanna go any bigger than that, most likely. However, there are a couple exceptions. If you have a smaller Jeep that's much lighter, you could probably run up to a 40-inch tire on Dana 44s, depending on how your Jeep's built. Maybe you have some lighter weight accessories, not everything's steel. Also, if you're gonna run things like chromoly axle shafts, speaking of, I really need to get a set of RCVs on this thing. But if you're planning on running 40s or anything bigger than that, you're pretty much gonna want to run 1-ton axles. So that is something to consider when picking your tire size, because it'd be a real bummer to lift your Jeep, put some big tires on, and go off-road and just snap an axle day 1. So something to think about. Third thing you're gonna want is armor. Now, in a lot of cases, something like this, which is a factory bumper, is not gonna hold up off-road. It's gonna get smashed, and oftentimes, it's gonna get pushed up into your body and actually causing more damage than if you would have just upgraded from the start. So Gladiator specific, but you could slam on this pretty hard and this isn't gonna flex up. But if you were to miss and hit the bumper back here, this is where this flimsy stock bumper is just not gonna hold up. This is another thing that I have on my list that I need to get to soon. Next up are rock sliders. And to be honest, the factory Rubicon rock sliders are really not that bad. They're pretty decent. What I went ahead and did on here was I added some tubing to the factory rock sliders. And if you're interested in that, I'll put a link somewhere up here so you can click on that. But there are tons of different aftermarket options for sliders like this. Aluminum, steel, there's a ton out there. And if you're hardcore into rock crawling, you're gonna wanna go aftermarket most likely. But if you're not really doing too much rock crawling, the factory rails will be totally good to go. Just keep in mind that if you're taking some really hard hits, eventually you're gonna need to upgrade. Now, when it comes to front bumpers, there's probably even more options out there. Now, this is a custom bumper that I built out of 1/4-inch aluminum to help save weight. Same reason you're gonna wanna upgrade your front bumper is the same as the rear. The factory bumper is usually pretty much just junk. Throw that thing away. And usually most aftermarket bumpers let you do a couple things. First off is mount a winch like this, which is very important, not something you can just do with factory bumpers. Second, it gives you a lot of options usually to add lights or accessories, and usually it gives you a couple good recovery points so you can pull or be pulled from them. And something to consider is aluminum versus steel. Usually steel bumpers are going to protect better at the cost of weight. Some of these Jeeps are already super heavy, so adding big heavy steel bumpers front and rear, plus the rock sliders, they're gonna take a beating better, but they're gonna weigh you down. While aluminum is gonna be usually more expensive and can't usually always take the same beating. So there are a ton of different factors to think about when you're choosing armor for your Jeep. So the third part of the armor is gonna be skid plates, or in some cases, full belly skid plates. Now, if you have something like a 4-door Jeep or a Gladiator like me, it's really long and the belly is gonna get hung up a lot off-road. It's just sort of the nature of the beast there. And while the Jeep comes equipped with some factory steel skid plates, oftentimes they're not really up for the task and they're a little bit bulky. There's several good companies out there like Artec and Rock Hard that are offering full belly skid plates, and I believe they're both in steel and aluminum. So still a couple things to think about for price and protection. If you're not doing any rocks and you're just doing like some mild off-roading and dunes and whatnot, your factory skid plates are gonna be totally adequate. Once you get off into the rocks and the serious stuff, you're definitely gonna want to upgrade that. Also, with the design of the skid plate, sometimes it just helps you to slide over things better, whereas the factory skid plates, as you'll see, just have some low-hanging spots where you can they hang you up more than sometimes than they help you. So skid plates are a must-have item. Next up on the list are axle gears and lockers. Now, if you have a Rubicon JL or JT like myself with the automatic transmission, you could probably get away with not changing your gears because that 8-speed automatic transmission is just so good. It keeps everything in the right RPM range. But if you're running an older Jeep like a JK or something, you're definitely gonna wanna re-gear your axles to accommodate for the larger tire size. If you don't have a Rubicon model that has the factory front and rear electronic lockers, you're gonna wanna upgrade to something like an ARB air locker, which is the most expensive but most popular. It's a selectable, it's great for driving on the street. Then you also have options like a spool or a lunchbox style locker. Those can be added as well. They're much cheaper, but you don't get to select when they're on or off, and like a spool is on all the time. It's just fully locked all the time. So depending on your rig and the type of terrain, I know that for now, I have the factory 410 gears in this Gladiator, and eventually I'm going to upgrade to 488s, 513s, not exactly sure. That's gonna help compensate for these larger tires. It does great off-road, but it's gonna help a little bit when we're on the freeway in that 8th gear, get some of that fuel economy back as well. So a lot of these are sort of linked together because you lift the Jeep, you put the bigger tires on, then you need to re-gear. So finally, you're gonna want to add a winch to your rig. And there's a lot of different options when it comes to a winch. You can go cheap, you can go expensive, you can go synthetic cable, you can go steel cable, you can go wired remote, you can go wireless remote. And some of my research online had led me to discover that it seems like a lot of these winches are being manufactured in the same place in China. So something like a Warn, the internals, might be the exact same as some of these off-brand, cheaper winches. The only thing that's different is the housing or casing. Bottom line, no matter what winch you get, it's just sort of that peace of mind when you're on the trail, or especially if you're by yourself, that if you get stuck, you can pull yourself out.